Let's pull back the curtain on Biden bucks. New documents, thanks to the declassification efforts led by DNI Tulsi Gabbard, reveal that the Biden White House used federal agencies for partisan voter registration under the guise of countering domestic terrorism. Of course they did. Now, it's not just an ethics issue, it's a national scandal. So here to break down all of this for us is the man leading the charge. It's Mike Howell, Executive Director of Oversight Project. So, Mike, is this going to be the smoking gun for Biden's federal election meddling? Is this what we needed?
I think there's a lot more to come. I mean, this just proves what they were doing and the fact that they were using basically the entire domestic security apparatus to achieve it. So we already knew that the Biden administration sought to enlist every single federal agency and department throughout the country to point them at blue areas to register Democrats. We've proven this over and over again. There's still some documents that'll come out to show exactly how they did it. But what Tulsi Gabbard, the head of or director of national intelligence, declassified 2 days ago or 3 days ago, shows that not only were they doing this through kind of the expected avenues of HUD, HHS, Small Business Administration, it was in the national security strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It's just absurd. I mean, I would say I'm surprised to see it, but I guess I'm just I'm surprised they're dumb enough to write it down.
Well, I mean, if there's more to come, like we just want to keep on getting it out there because we cannot let this go. I mean, the work you're doing is so important. And those of us who, we knew that they were doing stuff like this we've known this for a while. We've known they were planning on it for a while. But it is really, really important that you keep doing the work you're doing. Tell us a little bit, though. We're going to get more into it, but tell us a little bit about Tulsi. This is an amazing thing, right? To all of a sudden have someone actually being transparent and releasing this stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. So far, I think she stands above all of her colleagues in pushing the transparency envelope. She's fortunate because she sits at the perch of the entire intelligence community. So she's got a lot of stuff worth declassifying. But on this strategy, this is a early days Biden document where basically the first time ever they came up with a national domestic terrorism strategy. And we saw kind of the early ramifications of this classified strategy, which was using domestic terrorism authorities to do things like go after January 6ers, go after parents at school boards, and basically all political enemies of the left. And so we knew that basically there was centralization of the shift of the strongest governmental authorities that existed towards political enemies. But where things get wacky with this document is at the very end, page 15, there's kind of a grab bag section where they just throw in everything else that really has nothing to do whatsoever with even a colorable argument about domestic terrorism. They throw in, we need to get as many people registered to vote as possible using the government, and then implying that'll reduce domestic terrorism. Now, that's absurd on its face when you think about who the Biden administration was framing as domestic terrorists. It was virtually MAGA Republicans read a lot of white people. White people have the highest voter turnout in the country. So it's, on its face kind of laughable that they're trying to jam this, round peg into that square hole. It's just elsewhere in this kind of grab bag section, they talk about hate crimes and point to the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act. They talk about ghost guns and using kind of reporting metrics. It's just the final kind of toss everything we want to do, we don't have the legal authorities to do otherwise, into the strongest part of governmental authority, which is the intelligence community and their domestic terrorism capabilities.
All right, so we have some of the documents now. You're saying we're hopefully going to get some more. So let's push this conversation forward. And what do you expect, or what could Congress do to get involved in this? Do we expect to see any subpoenas, anything getting defunded? I mean, they are defunding a lot with DOJ right now, but is there going to be criminal referrals? What do you expect to see here to make this right?
So things were heating up last summer. Unfortunately, Congress never saw it all the way through. There were subpoenas to the government agencies for exactly what they did. I was advocating both privately and publicly that the subpoenas needed to go to the nonprofits, because essentially what the Biden administration decided was we're going to use the government, but then share info with the huge left-wing nonprofit infrastructure, which then, of course, would wind its way up into DNC hands. So you can see the straight line between partisan kind of explicitly voter registration efforts and, political dollars, and then connected to government taxpayer dollars, like using a small business administration office in Michigan, where they only put them in the deep blue areas around Detroit, but nothing in the Upper Peninsula where people vote red, to basically say, you want a government job, come to the Small Business Administration. Oh, by the way, we want you to turn out to vote. We're going to log you into our system. Here's how to get registered. They were also doing it in prisons, particularly the U.S. Marshals, because those people hadn't been convicted yet. So they're, not felons technically. They were using the U.S. Marshals to get those people activated to vote for Democrats. And it's absolutely insane. But what Congress should do is serve subpoenas to figure out the full extent of it. But they should also realize that the left fundamentally views counterterrorism authorities differently than the rest of the country. They never, ever hated radical Islamic terrorism as much as the rest of America. They viewed it as a annoyance, frankly, and a bad look for global Islam and their other causes. Yet the authorities that were designed post 9/11 have routinely been abused by the left for political purposes. So as Congress kind of looks at these authorities in the history of the left-wing abuse of them, they should really think about reining it in, not only for the application to partisan voter turnout efforts, but what they did to everyone over the last 4 years and some of the biggest civil rights abuses this country's ever seen.
This is why we needed Tulsi. This is why I'd like to see Joe Kent in there at National Counterterrorism Center, people like that who are actually going to overturn the tables in the temple. I mean, I'm still wrapping my head around what you're saying, because we knew that this was the case, but just to see it and to think about it in these concrete ways. So to counter terrorism in America, secretly, the Biden administration had to go register prisoners and people at food banks with our tax dollars.
Yes.
And to vote, obviously looking to vote Democrat. It is unconscionable. And the question it raises is, how in the hell did they lose? I mean, they must have been way more deeply unpopular than anyone even imagines. If you went out and used the federal government to round up how many votes, right? Yeah, I mean, you don't have an estimate of that yet. Do you?
No, we don't. The data isn't there. We pushed for it in some of our litigation. I think it probably exists somewhere, but it probably does not exist inside the government. It's over at the DNC after it's been laundered through some of these voter advocacy C3 organizations. And then, the lists are sold, the names are sold. They're put into the databases that then go into, the coffers or the custody of, hard political campaigns and the Democrat National Committee. I think that's where the data is.
Just to go to the big picture and how this all fits together for the folks at home, because most people, normal people who aren't insane like their enemies who did this to them with their own tax dollars, are not paying attention to this stuff. Tie this in to Biden's executive order, which you've really focused on for a while at the project, and explain the big picture.
So March of the first year of the Biden administration, there was a lot of pressure from the Holder wing, the Susan Rice wing, read the real moneyed thinking class of the Democratic Party, to push for a marriage between the nonprofit enterprise of the left and the federal government for the purposes of voter registration for Democrats. The result was an unprecedented executive order that Biden signed in March of that year, where he said every single government agency throughout the country, every last office, needs to be involved in voter registration. And furthermore, everyone needs to send me a plan on how to do it. We're all over this because it was clearly a massive constitutional abuse. It's the president's not allowed to use the government to secure his own reelection. And people started suing. We got involved. Biden and his Department of Justice claimed executive privilege, a form of it that's known as a presidential communications privilege, basically the highest level of privilege, to say, no one can see this. It's too sensitive. Only it's advice for the president and not for you. So it's got to remain hidden. We continued going after the mid-level agencies and thousands of FOIAs across the board. And eventually, through that and other investigative means, started to get not only the plans, but communication about the implementation of the plans, including White House notes, where they called all of, the Star Wars bar scene of all the far left voter registration groups, where somebody, again, took notes that they shouldn't have, where they basically had an illegal, a pro-illegal alien group there saying, we don't even need to worry about accidentally registering illegal aliens. They're aware of the law. We don't need to take any preventative measures. We just need to do this at scale and get as many people in the system as possible. And we kept finding routine things like that. The Michigan example, where we saw that the resources were only being deployed to blue areas. We looked at Native American reservations, where they were basically sending kids home from their reservation school with homework assignments to get their parents registered. And again, only in the furthest left Native American reservations. The thing was blatantly partisanly directional, and it tied in with nonprofits that were exclusively left to our research. Believe it or not, the Oversight Project was not involved in any of these White House meetings. And that's how they did it. They combined the government with, who knows, probably hundreds of millions of dollars with left-wing nonprofit resources for partisan reasons. And I am absolutely sure that the information that they were able to gather, the people they were able to register, ended up in left-wing political operations, so they can use all the kind of get out the vote resources to target those individuals.
Yeah, the Biden administration uses the full weight and force of the U.S. federal government. And guess what? Donald Trump still won. Mike Howell with the Oversight Project. You have to have one of the coolest jobs in the country. Every time you come on, you're just breaking one bombshell story after another. So we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you very much. We have a lot of fun.